For over 2,000 years, Chinese physicians prescribed this mushroom to emperors. Today, a single pound of it sells for $40 at farmers' markets. Commercial growers are clearing over $1,000 per 100 square feet of growing space. And in most American states, producing it at scale without a permit is illegal. Not because it's dangerous, not because it's a drug, but because the regulatory system that governs American agriculture wasn't built for something like this, and the people who profit from keeping it complicated have very little interest in changing that. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this crop is banned, exactly how much money it generates for those who navigate the rules, and what the science actually says about why demand for it is only accelerating. Most people have never seen a lion's mane mushroom in person. That's not an accident. It's a symptom of the problem we're going to unpack today. Hericium erinaceus. That's its scientific name. It grows naturally on the wounds of dying hardwood trees, cascading outward in long white tendrils that look more like a coral reef than anything you'd find in the produce aisle. Native to North America, Europe, and Asia. And for most of recorded history, it was considered one of the most valuable medicinal foods on Earth. Here's what makes it different from every other mushroom you've heard of. In 2009, a landmark study published in Phytotherapy Research followed 30 women with mild cognitive impairment over 16 weeks. The group consuming lion's mane extract showed statistically significant improvements in cognitive function scores compared to placebo. When they stopped taking it, the improvements reversed. That single result triggered an avalanche of research that hasn't slowed down since. By 2023, over 400 peer-reviewed studies had examined lion's mane's bioactive compounds, specifically hericinones and erinacines. These are the molecules that appear to stimulate nerve growth factor synthesis in the brain. NGF is the protein responsible for the growth, maintenance, and survival of neurons. You cannot currently patent a mushroom, but you can absolutely profit from one if you're allowed to grow it. And that's the problem. Because lion's mane doesn't just sell as food, it sells as a functional food. And the moment a crop crosses that line, the moment it's consumed for a health benefit rather than just calories, it enters a regulatory gray zone that the FDA, the USDA, and state departments of agriculture have never cleanly resolved. Drop a comment below right now. Had you ever heard of lion's mane before this video? I want to know how far under the radar this crop actually is. Here's where it gets complicated, and I mean genuinely, frustratingly complicated, not in a vague way, but in a way that has real dollar consequences for real growers. In the United States, mushroom cultivation falls under a patchwork of overlapping jurisdictions. The USDA regulates it as agriculture. The FDA regulates it as food. And if you make any health claims, even implicit ones, the FTC gets involved too. But the real barrier isn't federal. It's state level. 23 states currently require a separate specialty crop permit to grow mushrooms commercially. 12 of those states specifically classify mushroom cultivation as a controlled agricultural activity, meaning you need facility inspections, substrate sourcing documentation, and in some cases, annual renewal fees that run between $800 and $2,400. In California, the Department of Food and Agriculture requires a mushroom grower registration that can take up to 8 months to process. For a small grower trying to bootstrap a side operation, maybe a few hundred grow bags in a spare room or a converted shed, those timelines and fees aren't just inconvenient, they're prohibitive. And here's the part that should make you angry. Large-scale commercial operations can absorb those costs easily. The regulatory burden doesn't stop the big players. It stops the small ones. This is exactly the pattern we saw with raw milk, with hemp, with aquaponics in certain states. The regulatory complexity doesn't eliminate the market, it just determines who gets to participate in it. Now, some states are moving in the right direction. Oregon passed HB 2582 in 2021, creating a streamlined cottage food exemption that covers mushroom cultivation under $50,000 in annual revenue. Vermont followed with a similar provision in 2022. But for most of the country, the legal landscape is a minefield, and the people who've learned to navigate it, they're quietly making extraordinary money, which brings us to the numbers. Tai Chao, Sekobrakbu, Shern, Cha. If what we just covered about the regulatory maze hit differently than you expected, if you came here thinking this was just a story about a mushroom and you're realizing it's actually a story about who controls what you're allowed to grow, that like button is right there. And honestly, what I'm about to break down next, the actual profit mechanics that growers are using right now, makes everything so far look like the introduction. If this is the kind of deep agricultural analysis you want more of, subscribing takes 1 second. We do this every week, and you won't want to miss what we're covering next. Let's talk money. Specifically, a standard lion's mane grow bag uses approximately 5 pounds of substrate, typically supplemented hardwood sawdust with wheat bran at a 10 to 15% ratio. Each bag, properly colonized and fruited, produces between half a pound and 1 pound of fresh mushrooms per flush. Most growers get 2 to 3 flushes per bag before yield drops off significantly. At a conservative wholesale price of $14 per pound, not retail, wholesale, a single bag generates between $14 and $42 over its productive life. At retail farmers' market pricing of $35 to $40 per pound, that same bag generates between $35 and $120. Now scale that up. A modest 100 square foot grow room can hold approximately 200 active bags in rotation. Using a staggered inoculation schedule, a technique where you start new bags every 2 weeks to maintain continuous harvest, that space produces a near constant yield. Growers running this model at retail pricing consistently report $800 to $1,200 in monthly revenue per 100 square feet. That's not gross sales. That's after substrate costs, utilities, and packaging. One grower in Asheville, North Carolina, who asked to remain unnamed because of his state's pending permit application, told a 2023 profile in Modern Farmer magazine that his 400 square foot operation netted $47,000 in its second year. His biggest cost wasn't equipment. It wasn't substrate. It was the legal consultation fees he paid trying to figure out if he was allowed to sell what he was growing. That detail tells you everything about the current state of this industry. Here's what I want to know from you. If the regulatory barriers were removed tomorrow and you could legally grow lion's mane in your state without a permit, would you try it? Drop a 1 for yes, 2 for no in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many of you are already thinking about this. Here's the part that changes the entire picture. The global functional mushroom market was valued at $8.3 billion in 2022. According to a report published by Grandview Research in 2023, it's projected to reach $19.3 billion by 2030. That's a compound annual growth rate of 9.7%. In agricultural terms, that's not a trend. That's a structural shift, and lion's mane is at the center of it because the science keeps getting stronger. A 2023 study from the University of Queensland, published in the Journal of Neurochemistry, identified a specific compound in lion's mane called N-diphenylethyl isohericium, or NDPIH, that promotes neuron growth and enhanced memory formation in animal models at a rate significantly higher than previously studied compounds. The lead researcher, Professor Frederick Meunier, described the results as, quote, remarkable. That paper was cited by over 60 subsequent studies within its first year of publication. Meanwhile, consumer behavior data from Nielsen RIQ's 2023 Fresh Department report showed that specialty mushroom sales grew 43% year over year, the fastest growth of any produce category tracked. Faster than microgreens, faster than heirloom tomatoes, faster than any superfood trend of the last decade. The regulatory barriers that exist today are not permanent. They're the friction that always precedes a market maturing. Hemp was federally illegal until 2018. Today, it's a $28 billion industry. The trajectory for specialty mushrooms, and lion's mane specifically, follows an almost identical pattern. The growers who understand the current rules, who are building their operations legally and carefully right now, are positioning themselves the same way early hemp farmers positioned themselves in 2016. 2 years before the law changed. 2 years before the money flooded in. This might be the most important moment in specialty crop agriculture in a generation, and almost nobody outside this niche is paying attention yet. If that hit home for you, If you've been watching this thinking about your own land, your own situation, your own opportunity, you know what to do with that like button. We've covered the science, the legal reality, the profit mechanics, and where this market is heading. If you've made it this far, you're clearly not someone who's satisfied with surface-level information, and that's exactly the kind of content we build here every single week. Subscribe, because the next video we're publishing goes deep on another high-value specialty crop that almost no one in North America is growing yet, and the window on that opportunity is closing faster than most people realize. We started this video with a simple question. Why is a mushroom that Chinese emperors prized for 2,000 years, a mushroom that sells for $40 a pound, illegal to grow commercially in most American states? The answer isn't science. The science is clear, and it's getting clearer every year. The answer is that regulatory systems protect existing markets, and lion's mane doesn't fit neatly inside any existing market. But here's what history tells us. Crops that don't fit the existing system don't disappear. They wait. And the growers who do the work to understand the rules, who build their operations carefully while everyone else is still asking whether it's even legal, those are the growers who are there when the market opens up. The question isn't whether this crop has a future. The question is whether you'll be part of it. Share this with someone who grows specialty crops or has been thinking about starting. This is the kind of information that takes months to piece together on your own. If the economics of specialty crops fascinate you the way they fascinate us, you need to watch our breakdown of the most profitable crops per square foot in American agriculture right now. Click here. The #1 crop on that list will genuinely surprise you.